so long story short, I'm going to this is just going to kind of leave off where Jim Sterling left off with what he was talking about, how like Polygon was trying to defend loot boxes because they said that DLC would essentially go down. And I'm going to kind of expand some stuff, kind of add some other stuff to it as well that I've noticed. That, I mean, Jim Sterling has probably covered it, but like just kind of show more people that it exists. But anyways, so if you don't really get the idea of what his video was getting at, Polygon was essentially saying that if loot boxes exist right now in their current state, it will keep the prices down for DLC. And he made some other points as well. But the idea is that, but the reason why this article is really, it's wrong. It's because, while it is true that DLC will stay down, but at the same time, though, it's like, who's to really say that you can really take that seriously? Maybe that's not even 100% true. Maybe they can charge whatever they want, and so you got the DLC prices that are like outrageous, and then you have like the loot boxes will just be rigged too, and how much money people spend on them, or if somebody was able to get all the content that was in the loot box, how much money would they even have to spend if they got that on the first try at a minimum? And then what are the odds they get the rest of it? You know what I mean? So the problem with loot boxes has always been that they're rigged. Because, again, like Jim Sterling once said, if you're going to put something in these games, it's not like these things have to be in these games. I mean, this is here because people want to make money. They're acting like they have to. They're trying to exploit people. It doesn't need to exist this way. But it's there because, this is all done by these designers, or the publishers rather, so they're pressuring the game designers to program it like this. Maybe the game designers were against it, but this was against their job, and so it's like they want someone else to do their dirty work. And I mean, again, the whole video game industry, even if the AAA industry wants to brainwash you into thinking that there's not a bunch of games out there already, there's a ton of games out there already that are far better than what the AAA industry is doing with the whole like loot box system. You don't have to worry about microtransactions, and if there is any DLC, maybe you can find it on the internet somewhere, because not all DLC is they don't charge DLC for every game. I mean, there's some games out there that are kind enough to like say, hey, you want to play this game, here's all the DLC, it's free, after that. I'll be honest with you, there's other stuff out there too that I've even found games like I'm even playing through like the Growlancer series right now, which if you don't know what that is, it's like an old school Fire Emblem style, but it's a lot harder, and it's but again, it's old school, so it's like almost 20 years ago the series was made, but I'm translating it in English right now. I know there's already an English translation for it, but I'm trying to expand upon it, make sure it's correct, because it's a series I really love. But the thing that I've noticed, though, is that, there's a ton of great games out there that, these AAA title games could even be just as good if they didn't have, like, loot boxes and DLC, or they handled it better. So, like, for example, as far as loot boxes go, they could essentially say, hey, you know what? Take all the items that are in the loot box pool. Maybe every time you open a loot box, no, that's how they should do it. Give you items that you don't have. Randomize whatever those items are, and then pick from that pool whatever ones you don't have. Sure, maybe make the rare items have like the lowest chance if you'll get them, but you can still get them though. And then, but you're not getting repeats. You're not getting like these, you're getting items that are new every single time. And that would encourage people to keep trying to play it, because, you're eventually going to get all those items, rather than just, pissing you off. And it's like, you don't get these items. And correct me if I'm wrong, but are there some games out there, as far as loot boxes go, where they might have a deadline for them, and that is the only time you could ever get them? If that makes sense. I don't know. Unless somebody backs up the data, rips it, and then leaks it on the internet somewhere. Because again, it's just a file. Somebody can track down the files like a programmer. I'm sure there's ways around it. I'm sure, but it's still stupid that these companies try to take content and then they cut it from the final release, try to sell it to you again, or even worse, they might even put a limitation on like some of the stuff that they do. As far as microtransactions go, it's just rigged on purpose because, like, they want you to pay more for less. You know, essentially, I mean, like, if I bought a game for $60, especially a AAA title game, I mean, the reason why they call it a AAA title game is because it's supposed to be popular, it's supposed to sell lots of money. These companies are making, again, Activision Blizzard, they're already making billions. We're not talking like they're breaking even. We're talking like they're making so much money, even after the project's been created. They're making a lot more money, you know, based on the projects they make. So they're spending all this money, but then they're making a lot more of it back, and they're not losing any money. In other words, their profits. And when you think about it, they shouldn't really be able to, like, microtransactions and DLC. I mean, it all really should be free in their case, because it's just not. They're not losing money in this case. They can afford to make it free. I mean, especially, I mean, and essentially, what sense does it make that if you go out and buy a game, let's say, right, for the full price, and they say, and that's how they advertise it. They say, this is what you're getting out of this game. Wouldn't it make sense that if a company is going to put more stuff in a game, or if they're going to try to cut something out of the game and then try to say it's new content, but then they release enough information that this was actually in the final release of the game before it was released, that the game should be free in the game? Because technically, I mean, that's part of the game, if that makes sense. You know, I mean, like, so, like, for example, like, you know, take like a movie, for example, like take like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, for example, you know, or however they pronounce it. You know, there was two parts to it because it was the last movie. Now, some people have said that Hollywood made a second movie because they were trying to make more money off it, or rather they had to film it. But the idea was that they had to take like the final book in the Harry Potter trilogy, at least as of the moment that J.K. Rowling was publishing it. And, like, you know, they made all this money because they split it in two rather than just one. Now, personally, I still like the movies, but it seems like even as far as the books go, they left out some other things because they couldn't put everything in it. But some people might say that that's why you see, like, movies that have sequels and other sequels, because, you know, they're eventually going to try to make more money off it rather than just, you know, make one thing and then, you know, try to put it in one idea, and then if there's anything else after that, you know, try to try to capitalize in it some other way rather than just, you know, other efforts. Again, that might sound confusing, but it's, as far as video games go, the idea should be that if you're going to make a product, especially an idea, it should be just one thing, you know, as far as like the game itself goes. And if there's going to be DLC, if there's going to be microtransactions, if there's going to be loot boxes, I mean, it should be balanced for the player. It shouldn't be something ridiculous, because again, you've already paid for it. You know, if you paid for a movie ticket, let's say, or the movie itself, you know, you're going to see that movie. And I mean, so if they've already made their money back, then technically speaking, I mean, unless they're not going to sell you the same thing again, but like in a different aspect, I mean, it should really be free then after that, because they've already, technically that's what you paid for the first time. You know, you've already made your money on that, so therefore, I mean, unless of course it didn't sell well, but then again, it'd be like the director's fault, or, you know, for the most part. You know, so like what I'm saying is, as far as like the AAA title industries go, you know, the games anyways, they make these games, they sell it to you for, like, the whole game they should sell it to you for $60 or whatever the price is. And everything else after that should be free, because that content was originally supposed to be, you know, it's either in the game, it's supposed to be one game, or maybe they release it as a different project, and then you have that game, like all the projects after that, or all the content after that, it's just an adaptation to it. Now, some people might argue, well, it's optional, it should be, but still though, if it's going with the game, they already technically, I mean, you technically already own a copy of the game, and you should already have that content. You know, you shouldn't have to charge for it. It should technically be, because it's just not fair to the consumer that they go out and spend money on something, and then there's a company out there that can just make up these prices, or, you know, how much they really want to give you. Or you could do it like what Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 did. You know, maybe the game wasn't as bad as some people thought, but at the same time, though, you know, what did they do? The game, the way the game worked was, you know, they stored it on a Blu-ray disc, and maybe the game wasn't over 25 gigabytes, but like they said that the game itself had like all this. They left all the data didn't exceed over 25 gigabytes. As a matter of fact, it was like there was just some data on the disk, and then the rest of it you had to download, which is kind of ironic because, like, you know, they could have fit that game on a disk instead of having you download it. It's like they just wanted to troll people instead, if that makes sense. And so what I'm saying is that, you know, if these companies would stop trying to, you know, sell everything individually, because they want to make money next to nothing, it seems like, even though they're, you know, it just wouldn't make sense. Like, you know, it'd be like paying $60 for a game, and then, but like, so they're expecting some guy to pay $90 for it instead, just out of generosity. Why that extra $30? It would be like, you know, they essentially, like, these publishers want to make all the money in the world, or everything, but they want to do next to nothing to achieve it. And it's like, well, you know, it sounds like a smart idea, sure, but it's like, it's stupid though, because how is that fair to the consumer? How is that fair to the, you know, again, you see like all these companies trying to get away with a lot of this stuff because it hasn't caught up to them yet, or at least in a way, you know, you see them, they'll say, yeah, you know, they care, they don't want anything bad like this to happen, they'll make sure it never happens again. But, you know, but at the end of the day, they're trying to find a way to, you know, make more money by doing like absolutely nothing, and or at least putting a fair effort into it anyways, you know. And so really the idea is, as far as video games go, maybe not as far as the movie industry goes, but I just kind of brought that up earlier, just another example. It's like, you really, like, again, you know, if you're going to make a project, you should make sure it's done, you should test it, you shouldn't make any deals to anybody until you know it's finished. Because again, why sell people on lies? It doesn't work like that, you know. But anyways, as far as loot boxes go, as far as DLC goes, as far as, you know, the prices really aren't going to stay down, because if they can charge whatever they want, and not to mention, the idea is that the reason why they want to keep DLC down is because, you know, or people want it to be down, is because, you know, they try to charge people whatever they want for it. But at the end of the day, it's like with loot boxes, I mean, you're just kind of bringing that problem back even further, because nobody's really saving money on loot boxes. They're just spending all this money because most people don't have patience. And so if you can get all the content in the game through loot boxes, but like through in-game progression of loot boxes, I'm sure there's tutorials out there that could show people like how to speed up the loot box formula, sure, but I mean, like, but people are like, oh, you can just buy them instead, and it's like they make all this money, and then it's like you get all the game's data, and it's like, well, even if you waste all that money and time, it's like, well, unless you're still playing that game, it's like you just beat it, and you're maybe, you know, you're not going to be able to enjoy all that content, and then they're going to have you go out and buy another game and make you spend like $500. Again, that might be exaggerated, rather than just $60. And I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, you know, I have a job, but I'll tell you something. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've read the comment. He's like, you guys remember when, I mean, even Review Tech USA even made a video about this, where he talked about how, he's like, you guys remember like back in the day when you could just go out and buy a console, buy the game, and that was it. You didn't have to pay people to skip stuff. I can't tell you how many times I've got stuck on some games. Like, I mean, like, if you ever played Star Ocean 2, like in Delcio Unlimited, he's like literally a boss that doesn't, like, you can't freeze him, you can't, like, he just instantly recovers from everything, and then he can kill everybody instantly. If he, so you have to have like 4 characters running around, like, hitting this guy like really fast, and even on easy mode, it's not easy. It's crazy. But then, you know, but that was it though. Like, some games, like, if you wanted to beat them, you had to figure it out. Otherwise, that was it, you know. And then there was none of this pay-to-win methods. You know, you had the same advantage that everybody else did, unless you hacked the game or cheated with Game Genie or, you know. But then you have games where, you know, and then you would have some games where, like, you know, talk about how, like, you can skip certain things just by paying for it. It's like, well, remember back in the day where, you know, you only could save up until a certain point unless the game let you, again, or you could save anywhere, sort of. You know, the point is, at the end of the day, it's like, some of these games are hard because, you know, that's just the way they were made. And again, even the same thing with AAA title games. You know, they might have you believe that, yeah, you can get all this content by just doing absolutely nothing. All you want is real cash currency. But it's like, again, you know, they're the ones that are rigging it on purpose. They're the ones that can charge whatever they want. And they're the ones that are trying to make you believe that that's just how it is and that's how we need to accept it. But again, everything they're saying is false, because one, you don't have to play AAA title games. Two, there's better solutions for all these individual pricings. And three, you know, if they don't care about us, there's other people out there that care about us. You know, we could go play their games instead, because maybe somebody else could say, hey, you know what, maybe you make a game, or for example, maybe there's a game out there that has loot boxes, microtransactions, and DLC, but like all of it's free, it's in the player's favor, and maybe they go play that guy's game, for example, and say, fuck everybody else's games because this game was more balanced than all these other games. And then therefore maybe people were happy enough to play that in a time where you had a bunch of people just trolling everybody with, like, you know, trying to do next to nothing. You know, so like, for example, maybe there's a game out there as far as like loot boxes go, like, you know, maybe you get everything you want out of the game, all the content's free. Yeah, sure, you pay for the game, but then everything else after that's free, and they're still like expanding it, and they're not trying to piss you off with it. Because again, mind you, I'm not saying companies can't make money. It's just more or less how they go about doing it. And again, the same thing goes with Jim Sterling. You know what he's been saying. You know, he's right about this. People need to stop and think about what they do before they do stuff. Because again, you know, like Flint from G.I. Joe used to always say, you know, knowing is half the battle. You know, and doing is the other half. You know, depending on what you do and depending on how much you know, really shapes the way the world's progression works. And that is true. If you've got companies out there that are trying to make money, but for all the wrong reasons, they're going to only get away with it for so long. And who's to say that maybe there aren't lawsuits out there that they're already facing that eventually catch up to them and they lose all the money that they've ever made, and then they put themselves in debt. I mean, sure, yeah, you could say the same thing with EA and Activision or Activision Blizzard or, you know, whatever. But it's like, you know, that's just the tragedy that they've brought upon themselves. You know, yeah, they might have talented people, they might have talented games, but at the same time, though, they are single-handedly responsible for, or at least the upper management is anyways, for trying to say, hey, you know what, we want to make money, but we're going to take advantage of people instead for all the wrong reasons, rather than make a game where everybody wins, you know. Like, in a way, it's fair for the customer and it's fair to people, you know. It's, you know, people just are selfish and ignorant, you know, and it's sad because, I mean, when you have like all this money in the world, it's like, I mean, they could afford to do it. There's no way they're losing money on it. They just don't want to because they can get away with it. So, again, sorry for the repeats, but it really is a topic that really needs to be talked about. And the sooner that we get over this, you know, maybe we really can go back to the days where people could just buy a game and, again, because again, when you think about it, DLC, microtransactions, and loot boxes, I mean, they could be good concepts. They really could, but like they're just poorly programmed. And they're to fuck with you instead. And that's why they suck. It's not because, you know, having content, you know, like we're living in a day and age where, yeah, people can download stuff. People can fix stuff on the internet and maybe repatch it later on if they didn't catch it the first time. But at the same time, though, it's like, you know, you have to be, you got to take your project seriously. You have to take your own actions seriously. And if you don't, you're just going to have people like this calling you out, and, you know, shame on you and not on the people who actually are talking about it. So that's the problem with loot boxes. You know, they can be fixed, and they're definitely much more exploitative than than DLC would ever be. So again, you know, if you guys agree with this, you know, again, tell me what you guys think. You know, I want to hear what other people think about this. But I think Jim Sterling's right. I think I'm right too. And I think these companies really should just think twice about it. Because again, you want to make money, then be more fair to your consumer. Don't piss your fans off, because maybe it's just a miracle somehow, but for all the wrong reasons, that you still have enough people that are willing to buy your stuff rather than just pissing them off and expecting everybody just to still fork over their cash to you. So again, you know, comment, rate, subscribe, favorite, share this video, subscribe, click the bell, send money on my Patreon if you want, whatever. But again, if you like these kind of videos, I'll be making more of them.